The first thing I did after becoming a death row prisoner was strike beyond the prison walls like mad within 2.5 days. 18 dead, first, an underworld big shot mysteriously drowned while bathing. Then came news that the underground emperor choked to death from eating too fast. Everyone thought they were merely accidental deaths. They had no idea the killer was me, framed and imprisoned, all because I awakened the corpse judgment system. As long as I judged evildoers the law could not punish, I could receive rewards and grow stronger. A few days earlier, I was still a spirited college student. But by chance, in an alley, I stumbled onto a crime scene. When I was knocked unconscious and opened my eyes again, I found myself lying in a hotel, covered in blood, before I could even react. 7 or 8 uniformed police officers broke in. After that, I became the demon who had murdered 18 children. In court, I had no way to defend myself, because a witness I had never seen before appeared. I saw him drag a child into the alley with my own eyes. After that, I was sentenced to life and thrown into Blackstone prison. In prison, the tyrant Zhao who beat me half to death, but I still did not give up hope, because I firmly believed my parents were fighting for me. They would surely find a way to clear my name. Until one day, a prison guard told me they were dead. They died under revenge from the victims' families. At that moment, I completely despaired. But just when all hope was gone, and I was ready to smash myself to death with a piece of tofu, an electronic voice suddenly rang out in my mind. Congratulations, host, the corpse judgment system has awakened. From this moment on, you will have the right to judge all evil and the possibility of reviving your family. Hearing that, I instantly sprang up. My cheat ability had finally appeared. Then the system told me that judging evildoers would grant me sin hunting points. Besides that, I also possessed 4 abilities. The first ability was called Danger Sense. Any target harboring killing intent toward me would immediately appear in my mind marked as a red dot. I would also obtain basic information on the target. The second was called Evil Insight. Within a 500-meter radius around me, I could detect targets carrying evil values. The third was called Accident Creation. Within a designated range, I could create accidents that fit environmental logic, using them to eliminate targets and gain sin hunting points. The fourth ability was called Corpse Deployment. I could use sin hunting points to create corpses with various attributes. They could be killers or they could be hackers. After absorbing all this information, the light of hope reignited in my eyes. These 4 abilities would become everything on my road of revenge, as well as the key to reviving my family, that seemingly impossible obsession. After that, I tried using the system to deal with 3 targets who threatened me. The first was nicknamed Menzin. He was choked to death by a steamed bun while eating. The second was called Mad Dogly. He drowned in water while taking a shower. The third was the prison bully Zhao who often tormented me. During outdoor labor, a huge rock smashed into his head. All 3 of them died in all kinds of accidents. Even if Conan came, he would not find evidence that I killed them. Meanwhile, I also obtained 120 sin hunting points. But that amount could only exchange for an attribute-less corpse. It was no help against my current situation. After reading the corpse panel introduction, I formed a plan. Next, I needed to exchange for a prisoner who could protect me in prison, a corpse that would cost 500 sin hunting points. So I had to earn as many sin hunting points as possible. Then I used Danger Sense to learn who currently posed the greatest threat to me. One was Chen Dong, nicknamed Jianzi. He was Zhao Hu's most loyal underling. They would beat me whenever they felt like it. The other was Fatso Wu Gang. He was a pervert who liked young boys. He often made me help him pick up soap. So these 2 had already entered my must-kill list, but I knew that if I blindly used the system's abilities, I would very likely increase the risk of exposure. So I set 2 iron rules for myself regarding killing and cleanup. First, I required the targets I chose to have no pattern whatsoever. I would mix the people I truly wanted to kill among randomly selected targets. This could greatly reduce the risk of being discovered. Second, I required myself to stretch out the hunting timeline. After all, Blackstone Prison had death quotas every month. If too many people died in a short time, it would inevitably attract investigation from management. Based on these 2 iron rules, that afternoon I quickly found for more targets. Soon, it was lunchtime the next day. Holding my tray, I sat in an inconspicuous corner. Soon, I locked onto my first target. At that moment, Vulture was arrogantly enjoying the lunch his underling had brought. Not far away, a thin, weak prisoner was carrying a tray and walking toward him. On the tray was a serving of peanut butter. A golden gleam flashed through my eyes. Because Vulture had an extremely severe peanut allergy. Soon, that thin prisoner arrived beside Vulture. Without making any unnecessary move, I gave a command directly in my mind. Use Accident Creation. Target, Vulture, the prisoner carrying peanut butter. When passing Vulture's table, would trip over a leg someone nearby unintentionally stretched out. Then the peanut butter on his tray would fall into Vulture's vegetable soup. Soon, the system told me accident creation had activated and consumed sin hunting points. The next second, the thin prisoner suddenly cried out in alarm. It turned out he had been tripped by the leg of a prisoner stretching nearby. His body lurched forward violently. The stainless steel tray in his hands flew out at once. A large amount of food and soup spilled all over a prisoner. Then Vulture's underlings stood up one after another and beat the fallen prisoner with fists and kicks. Vulture was also disturbed by the sudden incident. He frowned unhappily. But what he did not know was that a small piece of peanut butter had silently melted into his vegetable soup, then it quickly vanished without a trace. After confirming the plan had succeeded perfectly, I immediately cleared my tray and left the cafeteria. A few minutes after I left, Vulture picked up his bowl and took a big mouthful of soup. Immediately after, his face turned red at a visible speed. Then he suddenly clutched his neck, making strange choking sounds from his throat. The next second, his huge body crashed heavily to the ground. A few minutes later, the prison doctor rushed in after hearing the news. After carrying out an emergency examination and rescue attempt on Vulture, the doctor finally announced his death helplessly. The preliminary judgment was that he died of acute anaphylaxis. At the same time, the system prompt sounded in my mind. Judgment target Vulture has died. Congratulations, host, you have gained 250 sin hunting points. Vulture's death also caused quite a stir in Blackstone prison. After all, he was considered a local overlord in prison. Yet he died in the cafeteria like a joke, and from beginning to end, no one suspected me. The official investigation result also blamed everything on an unfortunate accident. 3 days later, just as the prison atmosphere had begun to calm, the shadow of death descended again. At that moment, I was lying on my cell bed for a nap, but in reality, I was using evil insight to observe another target. In my field of vision, Boiler was working in the boiler room. Because he controlled part of the heating and hot water, he usually threw his weight around and extorted other prisoners. Many prisoners hated him to the bone. I had gone to the boiler room before and learned its layout and machinery structure. Seeing that the time was ripe, I issued a command in my mind. Target, boiler, cause the old pipe joint to suffer internal metal corrosion and fatigue until it can no longer withstand the pipe pressure. Soon, the system told me accident creation had activated and consumed sin hunting points. At that moment, inside the boiler room, Boiler was cursing while using a wrench to strike that rusty old pipe. Suddenly, an earth-shaking boom rang out. That old pipe I had cursed burst apart at its weakest joint. Scalding heat over 100 degrees gushed out instantly. Boiler had no time to react. He was completely swallowed by the terrifying steam. By the time the guards frantically shut off the valve, Boiler had practically been cooked. In the end, the accident was classified as an industrial accident caused by aging equipment. At the same time, I gained 150 sin hunting points. This brought me one step closer to exchanging for a corpse bodyguard. The successive accidental deaths of two prison tyrants left a huge vacuum in Blackstone Prison's power structure. Even my own cell block was affected. Without Zhao Hu's suppression, Chen Dong, the Jianzi of my cell, became increasingly arrogant. That day, I was sitting quietly in a corner eating. Chen Dong suddenly snatched away my tray and poured the few dishes inside into his own bowl. I said nothing, I just quietly watched him show off. What are you looking at? Go eat damn air. He glared at me viciously and said, his bloodshot eyes full of ferocity. I'm warning you, don't you dare play any tricks. Now that Vulture and Boiler are dead, this prison isn't peaceful anymore. Behave yourself, otherwise I'll be the first to kill you. After saying that, he kicked me to the ground. Then he viciously stomped me several more times. I silently curled up my body, trying to protect my vital parts. At that moment, my heart was filled only with icy killing intent. Originally, I planned to arrange Chen Dong's death later, but now I had changed my mind. This fool who did not know death was coming had to disappear from this world as soon as possible. Just as Chen Dong was enjoying the beating, a sharp whistle rang out. Then a tall prison guard walked in. The captain insignia on his shoulder showed he was the guard captain in charge of this cell block, Gao Kong. With one furious shout from Gao Kong, the cafeteria instantly fell silent. Then he grabbed Chen Dong by the collar and slapped him backhanded across the face. Chen Dong was hit so hard he spun half a circle on the spot, but Gao Kong was still not satisfied. He followed with a knee strike to Chen Dong's abdomen. It made him curl up like a cooked shrimp. You dare make trouble on my turf? Are you tired of living? Then he turned his gaze to me. The anger he had just calmed instantly flared again. Because Zhao Lu's accidental death had used up one precious slot on his monthly death list. And every one of those slots was a piece of great income for him. He could secretly manipulate things and reasonably dispose of some disobedient prisoners or those who offended powerful outsiders. In exchange for generous payment, and before Zhao, who died, the last person to have contact with him was me. So when he saw me again, he felt I brought terrible bad luck. Then Gao Kong pointed at my nose and cursed, "It takes two hands to clap. You're no good either. All of you, get your asses to solitary." After saying that, he kicked me hard. Then Gao Kong dragged Chen Dong and me into solitary like two dead dogs. As the iron door slammed shut behind us, the last bit of light and sound was completely cut off. Then, facing the cold wall, I began to think. In my mind, I was designing a grand death for Chen Dong. 3 days later, after Chen Dong and I left solitary, we were sent to the prison mine for labor reform. The mine at Blackstone Prison was the hardest and most dangerous place in the entire prison. Choking dust filled the air all year round. Chen Dong blamed the source of this disaster on me. His eyes were full of resentment when he looked at me. From time to time, he rammed me hard with his shoulder, cursing filthily under his breath. I remained silent the whole time, quietly pushing the mine cart. Then I recorded the surrounding environment and equipment in my mind. Finally, my gaze locked onto a spot not far away. At that moment, Chen Dong was struggling to push a mine cart. The cart was stopped on a slightly sloped track. Both the wheels and the rails were badly rusted. The joints creaked under the heavy load. This was undoubtedly the best moment to strike. Then I moved as far from Chen Dong as possible, found a relatively remote spot, and began swinging my pickaxe mechanically, as if I were nothing more than an ordinary labor prisoner. But in truth, I had already given the system a command. At that moment, Chen Dong used all his strength and finally pushed a giant rock onto the mine cart. At that very instant, the accident occurred. With a sharp metallic snap, the spikes fixing the rail broke one after another. The entire cart instantly lost balance. All the giant rocks on it were like a steel beast, suddenly tipping toward Chen Dong. His pupils contracted to the limit in an instant. He wanted to run, but the heavy labor had already drained his strength. He only had time to let out one short, desperate roar. The next second, countless rocks swallowed him completely. The man who had been alive a second before instantly became a pile of mangled flesh and blood. The sudden horror plunged the entire mine into deathly silence. Then huge panic erupted. Someone's dead. The cart derailed. Run. The prisoners dropped their tools and fled in terror. Soon, the guards' sharp whistles echoed through the mine. With just the right amount of fear and confusion on my face, I retreated with the crowd. Soon, Guard Captain Gao Kong arrived at the scene with his men. When he saw the pile of stones stained red with blood, his fists clenched instantly. Another one dead. This was already the second death slot this month. It also meant he had lost another share of income. Gao Qiang's rage almost burned away his reason. Then he hurriedly questioned the prisoners at the scene. Yet everyone's statements were shockingly consistent. This was an industrial accident caused by aging equipment. Gao Kong could not find any trace of human interference. But the rage in his heart needed an outlet, so I was unlucky again. Gao Kong grabbed me by the collar and said through gritted teeth, "You were clearly in the same group as Chen Dong. Why weren't you working together? If you two had supervised each other, this dangerous accident would never have happened. Damn it, get to solitary." Just like that, I was dragged into the familiar solitary room again. But to me, this had already become routine. The moment the door slammed shut, absolute darkness covered me again. After dealing with Chen Dong, I gained 100 sin hunting points. At this moment, my sin hunting point balance had reached 590. This amount was enough for me to summon a prisoner corpse bodyguard. That meant my safety now had some protection. After that, I issued a command in my mind, use corpse deployment. I created a burly corpse named Along and gave him physical strength beyond ordinary people, as well as resistance to blows. These abilities would allow him to defeat several ordinary young men barehanded. He would enter Blackstone Prison for intentional assault and be assigned to my cell, 2203. Soon, the system told me generation was complete and had consumed 550 sin hunting points. Early the next morning, the door to cell 2203 was roughly opened. Then a tall figure slowly walked in. Everyone in the cell was instantly drawn to him. The newcomer was nearly 1.9 meters tall, built as powerfully as a brown bear. His gray prison uniform was stretched tight by his explosive muscles. He simply stood there without saying a word, yet a sense of pressure covered the entire cell. The source was none other than the corpse I had created. Along's cold eyes slowly swept over everyone in the cell. Finally, he walked straight to Zhao Hu's former bunk. He took his things and slammed them heavily onto the bedboard. Then he sat down in silence. The prisoners in the cell all felt immense pressure at that moment. They looked at one another, not daring to speak, but a short prisoner nicknamed Mouse actually walked up to Along, courting death. He reached out and poked Along in the chest. "Hey, new guy, do you know the rules? You think you can sleep in this bunk just because you want to? Go scrub the toilet first, then give your big brothers a massage." Before he could finish, his words stopped abruptly. A large hand like iron tongs grabbed his wrist. The expression on Mouse's face froze instantly. He only felt that his wrist was being clamped by a hydraulic press. The intense pain made cold sweat break out instantly. "Damn it, let go of me," he roared in shock and rage. Along slowly raised his head. In those cold eyes, there was not the slightest emotional ripple. He simply stood up expressionlessly. Then with a casual swing, he threw the 100-plus-pound Mouse away like a sack. The cell instantly fell into deathly silence. Only Mouse's painful groans remained. Everyone was shocked by this thunderous scene. Their eyes were filled with fear as they looked at Along. Then Along's gaze slowly swept over everyone present. Finally, he said in a low voice, "From now on, this cell is my territory. Anyone object?" Meanwhile, the neighboring cell 2204 was also plotting something. A fat man weighing over 200 jin was lying shirtless on his bed. At that moment, his eyes were full of obscene desire. Now that the prison tyrants were almost all dead, he, Fatso Wu Gang, could do whatever he wanted from now on. As for Lin Mo and Ziliu, he had long been craving them. Thinking of this, Wu Gang licked his thick lips. Undisguised desire appeared in his eyes. Then he ordered his men, "During yard time today, surround the place for me." Soon, afternoon yard time arrived. Fatso Wu Gang was leading several underlings around, searching for something. Soon, he found his target in a corner. It was a young man of about 18, squatting on the ground and drawing something with a twig. His skin was fair and his features were delicate. In this prison full of violence and male hormones, he was like a tender little white rabbit. This person was exactly the Ziliu Wu Gang had been longing for day and night. Seeing him, a wicked smile appeared on Wu Gang's face. Then he led several underlings over. Ziliu instinctively raised his head, only to meet Wu Gang's fat face, which was filled with desire. He wanted to run, but found that Wu Gang's men had already blocked him in. With no choice, Ziliu could only say in a trembling voice, "Greetings, Brother Fatso." This almost made Wu Gang's heart melt. Then he reached out to touch Ziliu's face. Ziliu instinctively stepped back. Seeing this, Wu Gang's face instantly darkened. But immediately, he put on an even more disgusting smile. "What, still shy? Cell 2203 has no boss now. Follow me from now on. I promise you'll live well here, and no one will dare bully you." Wu Gang's underlings burst into mocking laughter. The way they looked at Ziliu was filled with lust and ill intent. Ziliu trembled even harder. He knew what Wu Gang's words meant. At this moment, Ziliu gathered his courage and stammered, "Our cell has a new boss." Hearing this, Wu Gang seemed to hear the biggest joke in the world. "With that bunch of weaklings, who wants to step out and let me see?" His laughter was full of disdain and mockery. At this moment, Along was watching all this coldly with his arms crossed. And I, inside solitary confinement, was also seeing everything through Along's vision. I had summoned Along to protect myself, but I needed that protection to carry authority and be justified. So Along had to show enough strength and responsibility. Since 2203 was now Along's territory, protecting its people was the best way to show it. That way, when Along protected me in the future, it would not seem abrupt. Immediately, I gave Along the order to act. Then Along immediately walked toward Wu Gang. By then, Wu Gang had already lost patience. He grabbed Ziliu's slender arm and said loudly, "Little thing, don't refuse the steps I'm giving you. Tonight, I'll have someone make arrangements." Ziliu screamed in fright. Tears even began to well up in his eyes. At that moment, a large hand like iron tongs grabbed Wu Gang's wrist without warning. A piercing pain instantly shot through him, twisting the fat on his face in agony. He turned his head in shock and rage, only to meet Along's icy face. Then Along said word by word, "The people of 2203 are under my protection. Try touching one of them." Wu Gang's mind went blank. Then he flew into a rage and roared, "Who the hell are you? You dare meddle in my business? Kill him." At his command, the 5 underlings behind him immediately charged toward Along. These prisoners were usually skilled at fighting and brawling. Yet only 2 seconds passed, and all 5 were taken down by Along. Seeing this, Wu Gang had only one thought left: run. But before he could react, Along suddenly raised his leg and kicked him in the abdomen. Immediately after, Wu Gang's fat body flew backward. Then Along lifted his foot and stepped on his chest. In an instant, Wu Gang felt as if he could not breathe. Along bent down and leaned close to his face. "If I see you near anyone from 2203 again, I'll snap your neck myself." As soon as he finished speaking, a sharp whistle cut through the calm of the yard. Guard Captain Gao Kong rushed over with his men, his face livid. Damn it, fighting again. Do none of you want to live? Gao Qiang's gaze swept over the prisoners still groaning on the ground. Finally, it locked onto the burly Along. Then he pointed at Along and shouted, "Was it you who started this?" Along nodded, showing he accepted punishment. Seeing his attitude, Gao Kong was furious. A newcomer dares be this arrogant, and bring that fat pig Wu Gang here too. You two, go reflect in solitary. After that, the guards roughly escorted the two into solitary confinement. The surrounding prisoners watched Along's departing back, their eyes filled with awe. They knew another ruthless man had arrived in the prison. With absolute strength and responsibility, Along established his status as a prison tyrant. In the crowd, Zi Liu clenched his fists. His reddened eyes were filled with unspeakable gratitude. Inside solitary, I silently watched everything that happened in the yard. Along's performance satisfied me. Next, I could use my identity as part of 2203 to let Along protect me openly and justifiably. Next, I had to eliminate the fourth target, Slippery. This Slippery loved resting during yard time under an old basketball hoop. That spot happened to be a blind spot for the cameras, and I had long noticed that several screws on the basketball hoop were severely rusted. Through Along, at last, I could clearly see the images sent back. Sure enough, that prisoner called Slippery, as usual, was leaning beneath that dangerous basketball hoop. Seeing this, I decisively used accident creation. By then, the chaos in the yard had gradually settled. The prisoners returned to their usual small groups. Slippery yawned and changed into a more comfortable position, leaning against the basketball hoop. At that moment, a fierce gust of wind suddenly swept across the yard. The old basketball hoop was blown into violent shaking. Seeing this, Slippery prepared to get up and leave. But everything was already too late. Amid the howling wind and the piercing groan of the basketball hoop, the screws fixing the heavy base snapped apart. After losing its fixed base, the heavy basketball hoop, weighing several hundred jin, smashed straight downward. A dull crash rang out. The heavy iron plate struck Slippery precisely on the back of the head. Slippery did not even have time to let out a scream. He collapsed limply to the ground. The yard once again fell into deathly silence. Then terrified screams erupted. Someone's dead. The basketball hoop crushed someone. Someone come quick. Soon, the prison alarm was sounded. All the prisoners were urgently sent back to their cells. Prison staff carefully investigated the scene. They found the broken, rusted screws and questioned several witnesses. Everyone thought Slippery was simply too unlucky. In the end, the prison classified the incident as an accident. No one suspected that an invisible hand was behind it all. In the darkness of solitary confinement, I slowly closed my eyes. This judgment earned me 100 sin hunting points. In my heart, I muttered, "Your turn is coming soon, Wu Gang." 2 days later, I finally walked out of solitary. When I returned to cell 2203, I keenly sensed a subtle shift in the atmosphere. Along, this man who had only entered prison a few days ago had relied on the simplest, crudest fists, and his sense of responsibility at critical moments to make everyone in the cell fear and respect him. But I calmly returned to my own bed. Now, it was time for the next target, Scorpion, to have an accident. From other prisoners' idle chatter, I learned that Scorpion was one of the workers in the prison factory who operated the grinding wheel. With this crucial piece of information, a brand new death script appeared in my mind. Another day passed. Along successfully walked out of solitary. When his tall figure appeared in the cell, the air in the entire cell instantly froze. All the prisoners instinctively stopped what they were doing. At this moment, Mouse came up with a flattering smile. "Brother Long, you're back. You were so impressive that day." Seeing this, the others immediately gathered around and started flattering him. Along merely nodded expressionlessly. Then his gaze passed over everyone and landed on me. In everyone's eyes, this was my first meeting with Along. They thought Along was expressing dissatisfaction because I had not welcomed him. Mouse was extremely sharp. He immediately seized this chance to perform in front of the new boss. He suddenly turned around and shouted angrily at me, "Lin Mo, are you blind? Can't you see Brother Long is back? Get over here and make Brother Long's bed and pour him water." Hearing this, I obediently climbed down from my bed. But at that moment, Along suddenly moved. A loud slap rang out. Mouse was slapped so hard he spun half a circle on the spot. Everyone was stunned. Mouse covered his face and looked at Along in disbelief. "Brother Long, why did you hit me?" Then Along's cold voice rang out. "If someone causes trouble outside, I'll take it on for you. But inside this room, all of you listen to me. Especially, don't make decisions for me." Mouse and the others turned pale with fright and dared not argue. Seeing this, Along finally nodded in satisfaction. Then he walked straight up to me and said, "From now on, you tidy my bed." After a pause, he added, "No one here dares touch you." I silently nodded. Then I picked up his bedding and started working. After that, my days in the cell became much easier. No one dared order me around anymore. This way, I could put more energy into my plan. That afternoon, the prison arranged for prisoners to do manual labor. As I used an iron shovel to break gravel, I quietly observed the distance from the corner of my eye. Soon, the sound of a grinding wheel starting came from the factory. I knew the timing was about right. I immediately used accident creation in my mind. At that moment, inside the roaring factory, Scorpion was operating the machine while talking dirty with the prisoners beside him. A lewd smile hung on his face. He did not sense death approaching at all. At this moment, inside the high-speed grinding wheel, several invisible dangerous cracks had already appeared. Under centrifugal force, these cracks began spreading rapidly. At this time, Scorpion was still bragging to the people beside him. "Let me tell you, back when I was outside, there was nothing I hadn't tried." But before he could finish, the grinding wheel in his hands suddenly let out a sharp screech. Then the entire machine began shaking violently. Scorpion frowned at the sight and was just about to switch off the power when an earth-shaking explosion rang out. The grinding wheel, covered in countless microcracks, suddenly exploded. Countless fragments of different sizes shot out in every direction. Several nearby prisoners were struck by the flying fragments and immediately collapsed, covered in blood. Poor Scorpion happened to be standing at the center of the storm. He was not even given time to react. A palm-sized fragment sliced him apart. Several seconds later, his mutilated body finally fell to the ground with a thud. The entire workshop fell into deathly silence. A few seconds later, a hysterical scream came from inside the factory. "Someone come quick, someone's dead again." Soon, a piercing alarm rang out. Then a team of armed guards rushed into the factory. Through gaps in the crowd, I saw several guards rush in carrying a stretcher. Then the system in my mind notified me that the judgment had succeeded. I gained 100 Sin hunting points. A long while later, the guards came over and ordered everyone to assemble. Today's labor ended early. On the way back to the cell, news about the factory accident had already spread everywhere. That night, the prison issued an official notice about the incident. They classified it as a production safety accident. Immediately after, to prevent such incidents from happening again, the prison required that from tomorrow, all inmates would undergo a 3-day safety production knowledge study session. I lay on my bed and listened to the announcement from the broadcast. Although no one suspected this incident, I still keenly realized one thing. Deaths by production accidents were convenient, but if they happened continuously within a short time, even if each one had a reasonable explanation, they would inevitably arouse suspicion from someone attentive. It seemed I had to change methods next time. On the second day of the safety production study, the prisoners were gathered in the yard to listen to a guard read safety regulations from the stage. The prisoners below were drowsy under the sun. Yet during this boring study session, I sensed a deadly danger quietly growing. Ever since Along violently beat Wu Gang in the yard, he had completely behaved himself. But this afternoon, the situation changed again. The line of malice coming from Wu Gang's direction was becoming thicker. At a visible speed, its color also changed from light gray gradually into dark red. This instantly put me on high alert. It seemed Wu Gang was definitely plotting something in secret. But no matter what he was planning, I had no intention of waiting passively. I would strike first and kill every threat in its cradle. As for his death script, I had already written it. Soon, it was prison shower time. Dozens of men crowded into a steamy communal bathhouse to wash. I did not like this part, so I always washed as quickly as possible and then quietly left. But Fatso Wu Gang was the exact opposite. He seemed to enjoy this atmosphere. He especially enjoyed it after everyone left, monopolizing the entire bathhouse's quietness alone. This habit provided me with the perfect time and place to act. That night, I came to the bathhouse as usual, while pretending to wipe my body. I surveyed the bathhouse surroundings. Soon, I locked onto an excellent stage. In one corner of the bathhouse, the edge of a floor tile had loosened and curled upward, revealing a sharp point like the edge of a blade. To me, this was simply a natural death trap. After confirming the script, I used accident creation in my mind. After the system told me the setup was complete, I put on my prison uniform and left the bathhouse. Half an hour soon passed. At this moment, only 2 people remained in the bathhouse. Wu Gang closed his eyes, enjoying the hot water while plotting his revenge in his heart. At the same time, in the next stall, another prisoner, in a hurry to leave, accidentally dropped a slippery bar of soap. Seeing there was not much soap left, the prisoner left without looking back. After that little bar of soap fell to the floor, It slid along the water in a strange arc, then it slid right beneath the excited Wu Gang's feet. The next second, he unconsciously stepped forward. A slippery sensation instantly came from under his foot. Then his body uncontrollably leaned backward. And somehow, as if an invisible hand was precisely adjusting his fall and landing point, a dull, teeth-grating sound rang out. Wu Gang's back of the head landed with terrifying precision, on the sharp corner of the raised floor tile. The ceramic edge was like a hidden axe, embedding itself deep into his brain. Blood instantly gushed from the wound. His body convulsed violently on the floor twice, then completely lost all signs of life. After who knew how long, a patrolling guard walked over yawning, ready to lock the door. The next second, the sleepiness on his face froze. Holy shit, someone's dead again. Soon, a police line was set up again at the bathhouse entrance. Several guards and prison doctors rushed inside, but everything was already too late. After a simple examination, the doctor announced Wu Gang's death with a grave expression. Seeing this, guard captain Gao Kong looked so gloomy his face could drip water. This was already the third abnormal prisoner death in his area this month. This meant his income this month had dropped yet again. Thinking of this, a ruthless glint flashed in Gao Qiang's eyes. It was not that he suspected anything strange about this death. After all, the traces at the scene were too obvious. This was a textbook accident case. What angered him was that this damned accident had caused him real losses. No, he had to find a way to make up for this loss. At this moment, I was quietly lying on my own bunk. Soon, the judgment success prompt sounded in my mind. The notification sound, and I obtained 150 crime hunting points. I could clearly feel the thick line representing Wu Gang, that dark red line of malice, had completely collapsed into nothingness. That meant the threat was gone. At this moment, in the entire prison, no powerful malice was aimed at me. The survival crisis inside the prison had finally come to a temporary end. It was time to begin my revenge plan. First, I had to figure out who had sent me into this hell. Soon, 5 leads appeared in my mind, all of which had to be investigated. The first was that perjurer, the key witness in court, who identified me as the serial killer. That was the most direct breakthrough. The second was to investigate the police official in charge of the case. I had to find out whether they acted intentionally or not, and behind that seemingly flawless chain of evidence, how much had been fabricated. The third was to find the real serial killer, the devil who had committed those monstrous crimes but made me bear all the blame. The fourth was the vague deal I overheard in the alley. After thinking about it for a long time, I was certain my framing and imprisonment definitely had something to do with that information. The fifth was to find the murderer of my family. That was the deepest wound in my heart. Had my family died because of revenge, or were they silenced? All of this was waiting for my investigation. These 5 leads were tangled together, forming an enormous web. With my current strength alone, I was far from enough. So I had to act like the most meticulous hunter, laying the trap step by step, then calmly waiting for the moment to close the net. For that, I set 3 iron rules for myself. The first iron rule: trust only myself. No one in this world could be trusted anymore. Human nature cannot withstand tests. Any act of placing hope in others is foolish. All plans would be designed by me alone behind the scenes. All power had to be something I could control 100%. The second iron rule: stay completely behind the scenes. Although the system had granted me extraordinary power, my body was still mortal. A single bullet, or one accident, could doom me forever, so I had to hide myself completely. All real assassinations and investigations had to be carried out by agents with no connection to me whatsoever. The shield and the sword had to be strictly separated. The third iron rule: create smokescreens. If I only targeted my own enemies, no matter how brilliant the methods were, clues would inevitably be left behind for them to follow. The only way was to make the clues endless, leaving the enemy with nowhere to start. So I would create countless irregular cases, burying the true targets of revenge beneath an ocean of crimes. Now that the plan was set, it was time to begin by creating my first sword. Then my consciousness entered the system interface again. This time, I mainly focused on the deployment abilities available. At present, 1 attribute less death agent required 100 crime hunting points. A skilled assassin required 300 crime hunting points. A skilled assassin could proficiently use a specific tool to kill and possess all related skills. And master assassin required 3,000 crime hunting points. This skill could raise a death agent's killing techniques to the absolute peak. It could truly kill without leaving a trace. He could freely use any object as a lethal weapon, but 3,000 crime hunting points were, for the current me, still an unreachable gulf. For now, a skilled killer was the best choice for me. At this moment, I had 470 crime hunting points, just enough to exchange for an attribute-less death agent and his skilled assassin. So I planned to create a death agent tomorrow, then release him. At the same time, I would keep searching for targets in prison to gain more crime hunting points. During yard time the next day, I found an inconspicuous corner. After sitting down, I closed my eyes. I used death agent creation. The death agent I created this time was named Priest. He was an ordinary-looking middle-aged man, but he possessed professional assassination skills and knowledge. I set his killing weapon as an inconspicuous ballpoint pen. Soon, in a dark, damp alley, a man appeared silently. His name was Priest. He had no past and no memories, nor did he possess any emotions. He existed for one purpose only, to carry out my secret orders. Then I began remotely controlling this death agent. First, I tried moving Priest's hands and feet. The feedback to my body was precise and swift. There was no delay at all. Then Priest touched his pocket. Inside were a few bills and an ordinary ballpoint pen, and that ballpoint pen was his sword. Then I gave him his first order: kill a vicious criminal who deserved death, but remained beyond the law. After receiving the order, Priest headed toward the courthouse. Soon, he found a corner near the courthouse entrance. Then he stood there quietly, observing everyone who walked out of the doors. Before long, an elderly man in his 60s walked out of the courthouse. His cries quickly drew some passers-by to watch. Priest also slowly walked over. Soon, the old man, sunk in despair, began telling everyone his story. It turned out a fraudster named Huang Sihai had run a pig butchering scam. The old man had invested 300,000 in Huang Sihai's company, thinking he would get rich overnight. But unexpectedly, Huang Sihai took the money and ran. At the same time, his wife's heart disease flared up, and she was waiting for money to save her life. But when he tried to sue, he was told there was insufficient evidence and the case could not be heard. That was why he was crying at the courthouse entrance. When he reached the saddest part, the old man nearly fainted from crying. The surrounding crowd let out waves of sighs, but what use were sighs? At that moment, a beaming man walked out of the courthouse. The moment he appeared, the old man, who had been crying, immediately raised his head and glared at him. "Huang Sihai, you beast! Give me back my hard-earned money." The old man rushed toward him like a madman. But before he could get close, two bodyguards beside Huang Sihai blocked him. Then Huang Sihai spoke arrogantly to the crowd. "Regarding today's matter, the court has already given a fair judgment. I, Huang Sihai, do business in response to national policy. As for this old gentleman's experience, I sympathize. But commercial failure is no reason for him to openly slander me." At this moment, his voice suddenly turned cold. "I am a lawful businessman and also an entrepreneur. My reputation is more important than my life. Anyone here who believes and spreads rumors today will have my legal team show them what defamation means." The onlookers, who had been filled with righteous anger, were instantly cowed by these words. After all, everyone was afraid of getting sued. Huang Sihai looked at the scene with satisfaction. Then he leaned close to the old man's ear and whispered, "Old thing, don't refuse a toast only to drink a penalty. How many more days can that sick wife of yours last? If you dare keep spouting nonsense outside, believe it or not, I'll have someone pull out her oxygen tube right now." The old man trembled all over. It was as if he had fallen into an ice pit. He stared in disbelief at that refined face before him. There was no longer the slightest disguise on it, only naked malice. Fear instantly overwhelmed his anger. Huang Sihai looked at the old man's instantly pale face and gave a contemptuous sneer. Then he led his men toward a black Bentley parked not far away. Through Priest's eyes, I saw everything that had just happened. The old man's despairing eyes deeply pierced me. It was a resonance born of shared suffering. I had once been like him, feeling that even heaven would not answer and the earth would not respond. People like Huang Sihai toyed with the law in the palm of their hands, treating others' lives and dignity like worthless grass. He was more evil than simple violent criminals. Most importantly, he perfectly fit my needs: a villain who deserved death, a target beyond the punishment of the law, and a piece sufficient to muddy the waters and create a smokescreen. Soon, I sent Priest the hunting order. Priest received the order without hesitation. He walked directly into an internet cafe. Soon, he gathered enough information online. The man named Huang Sihai was skilled at packaging himself. Online, he was a successful young entrepreneur. Among hundreds of reports, every single one was positive news about him, but Priest searched very carefully. Soon, on a legal website, he found a trail of clues. It turned out Huang Sihai was a typical financial fraudster. After obtaining enough information, Priest left the internet cafe. At 6 o'clock the next afternoon, he waited outside Huang Sihai's company until Huang appeared. Then he followed him all the way to a high-end villa. Because security there was extremely tight, Priest did not approach rashly. He only recorded some useful information from afar. The next day, Priest followed him to an upscale restaurant. During this process, he noticed one thing: Huang Xihai's two bodyguards were both rather unprofessional. When their employer was not nearby, they would smoke and scroll short videos. This would provide Priest's next move with a perfect opportunity. On the third day, Priest followed Huang Xihai to Yulong Pavilion. It was a top-tier Chinese restaurant, known for privacy and luxury. In the underground parking garage, Priest, wearing a blue property maintenance uniform with a cap and mask, was calmly checking the fire safety equipment on the wall. Soon, Huang Xihai walked over leisurely toward the elevator lobby alone. His two bodyguards stayed in the car and waited. Priest knew the chance had come. Then Priest took the metal ballpoint pen from his pocket and followed Huang Xihai into the elevator. After the elevator doors closed, Huang Xihai was reaching out to press the button to go up. But suddenly, he felt a chill at the back of his neck. Before he could make any sound, a powerful hand clamped tightly over his mouth, pinning his entire body against the cold wall. At that moment, he saw the other man raise a pen. Then, a burst of intense pain exploded from the side of his neck. Priest used all his strength to drive that sharp ballpoint pen into his carotid artery. A muffled sound rang out. Huang Xihai's body jerked violently. He could clearly feel a warm liquid gushing rapidly from his neck. The strength and warmth in his body were slowly disappearing. He wanted to call for help, but his mouth was covered. Pain and suffocation made his vision go dark. Countless images flashed through his mind like a revolving lantern. He did not want to die. He still had endless wealth left to enjoy, and countless days of living above others waiting for him. However, life was draining away so mercilessly and quickly. Priest did not pull the pen out immediately. Instead, he twisted his wrist and used the sharp tip to tear viciously inside Huang Xihai's neck. This completely destroyed Huang Xihai's remaining life force. His struggling stopped instantly. His body collapsed limply like a pile of mud. Only after confirming the target was completely dead did Priest gently lay his body on the floor. Then he immediately took out a rag and cleaned the traces left at the scene. There was not a single unnecessary movement in the entire process. Soon, he put his cap back on and walked toward another exit of the parking garage. From attack to departure, the whole process took less than 15 seconds. In the Bentley not far away, the two bodyguards were wearing earphones. One was watching funny short videos, and the other was voice chatting with a friend. They had no idea that, from that moment on, they were already unemployed. At this moment, I was lying on my bunk with my eyes closed, looking as if I were taking a nap, but my consciousness had long crossed the barriers of space and time, coldly watching that silent judgment. The instant Huang Xihai died, a series of icy notification sounds rang in my mind. Congratulations, host, you have completed the judgment. You have obtained 500 crime hunting points. That number was absurdly high. Those vicious prisoners in hell were worth 150 points at most. One could imagine just how many sins Huang Xihai had committed. This also gave me a completely new idea. So the truly big fish were all outside the prison. Then I ordered Priest to hide immediately. Next, I needed to consider my future layout, and information would always come first. Thinking of this, I began planning my next summoning. Now, I needed a death agent specialized in intelligence and a hacker capable of infiltrating modern society's information networks was undoubtedly the best choice. But a skilled hacker required 300 crime hunting points, while an elite hacker required 3,000 points. That number was currently far beyond my reach, and hacking was different from killing. Ordinary hacking skills would not be especially useful to me. So after thinking for a while, I decided to wait until I had saved enough crime hunting points. Then go straight for a major upgrade. Meanwhile, in Yulong Pavilion's underground parking garage, police tape had already been put up. Veteran officer Zhao Donglai was frowning as he examined Huang Xihai's body. According to the forensic examiner's preliminary judgment, the murder weapon was a sharp object less than 1 centimeter in diameter. It had pierced the victim's neck and precisely severed the carotid artery. Moreover, no traces were found in the elevator. Zhao Donglai knew the killer this time was an expert. A terrifyingly meticulous professional assassin. That was the first profile of the killer that formed in his mind. Soon, Huang Xihai's two bodyguards were brought before Zhao Donglai. Their faces were deathly pale and their bodies shook like sieves. Because their careers were already over, the boss they were protecting had died less than 20 meters away from them. Still, they were not completely useless. Soon, Zhao Donglai questioned them and obtained one piece of information. At the crime scene, a repairman in a blue uniform had appeared. He immediately sent people to ask Yulong Pavilion's property management. But the reply he received was that they had not called any maintenance staff today at all. In other words, that repairman had disguised himself to sneak in. Zhao Donglai was certain that this person was absolutely the killer. Unfortunately, all surveillance cameras at the scene had been deliberately destroyed before the crime. Every lead was cut off. Zhao Donglai felt a wave of headache. The other party was like a ghost, vanishing from the world after succeeding. After a moment of silence, Zhao Donglai gave all officers an order. First, immediately retrieve all surveillance footage from intersections around Yulong Pavilion. From 1 hour before the crime to 1 hour after, every pedestrian and vehicle appearing on camera must be checked. Second, find the killer's motive. Huang Xihai's line of work was complicated, so he definitely had quite a few enemies. At that moment, inside Blackstone Prison, I suddenly sensed two extremely dangerous waves of malice. One came from prison guard Captain Gao Kong. His line of malice, which had originally been thin and long, began to grow thicker and redder at a visible speed. The other line changed almost in sync with Gao Qiang's. The owner of that line was Wang Dashan, the boss of Guangming Coal Mine. These two people seemed to have no connection, yet at the same time, they produced lethal malice toward me. When something is abnormal, there must be a reason. This was absolutely no coincidence. Gao Kong and this Wang Dashan, whom I had never met, must have some kind of connection. I knew I could not just sit and wait for death. I had to make a move against prison guard Captain Gao Kong. Soon, my mind began working at high speed. 10 minutes later, I had already written the perfect death scenario for Gao Kong. At this moment, inside the prison guard office, Gao Kong was looking at a list with a sinister smile. The list was none other than Block 2's monthly death statistics report. There were already several names on it, all serious criminals no one cared about. And next, he was preparing to write Lin Mo's name on it. Gao Kong tapped the desk while thinking. He had quite an impression of this young man. When Lin Mo first arrived, he had been very defiant. Later, he became completely inconspicuous, but none of that mattered. What mattered was that superstitious coal boss was opening a new mine recently. He specifically wanted a sacrifice with a strong fate, and the price he offered was very high. So Gao Kong immediately thought of Lin Mo. A murderer carrying 18 lives on his back must have an extremely hard fate, and he had no family or ties. Even if he died, no one would come asking questions. He was simply the perfect supply. Gao Kong had already planned it. Tomorrow, he would find a way to lock Lin Mo in solitary confinement, then announce to the outside that he had died suddenly. After that, he would secretly transport the body out. Thinking of the huge sum he was about to receive, Gao Qiang's smile grew even wider. Then he prepared to write the two characters Lin Mo on the death list. But just as his pen began the first stroke of Lin, he suddenly felt a little thirsty. So he subconsciously reached out and picked up the hot tea beside him. And at that moment, the accident happened to him. The loose sleeve of his prison guard uniform accidentally knocked over the scalding teacup. A full cup of hot tea spilled onto the documents. Some of the tea landed precisely on the power strip under the desk. The next second, a piercing electric crackle exploded. The power strip short-circuited instantly, bursting with countless dazzling blue sparks. Gao Qiang's body began convulsing violently. He wanted to shout and call for help, but only hoarse sounds came from his throat. 2 seconds later, Gao Kong completely stopped breathing. Soon, the incident caused an uproar in Blackstone Prison. After all, as a mid-level prison leader, his death drew great attention from management. The warden personally ordered the scene sealed off and quickly set up a special investigation team to thoroughly investigate the matter. The investigation team conducted a tight, carpet-style search of the scene. However, the investigation went unusually smoothly. All evidence clearly pointed to the same conclusion. Gao Kong died from an instant, high-voltage electric shock that caused cardiac arrest. The possibility of homicide was basically ruled out. Because under Gao Qiang's desk, the team found a low-quality power strip burned completely black and around the power strip. There were obvious water stains. Besides that, they also found the death list on the desk. But awkwardly, the prisoners listed on it were all still alive and well. After the warden learned of this, he immediately stopped the investigation. In the end, Gao Qiang's death was ruled an accident. Because if they dug deeper, they would inevitably drag out more hidden filth. Then where would the reputation of Blackstone Prison's management go? Who knew how many shady deals were hidden beneath those deep waters? But no matter the result, no one connected the incident to me. But what I did not expect was, after completing Gao Qiang's judgment, I actually obtained a full 900 crime hunting points. These were definitely not sins a mere greedy prison guard could commit. Gao Qiang's hands must have been stained with prisoners' blood. His practice of selling prisoners' lives was probably already routine. Although the crisis was temporarily resolved, I felt an even deeper unease. Here, I was a prisoner. My life was held casually in the hands of the prison managers. Today, it could be Gao Kong. Tomorrow, it could be Li Kong or Wang Kong. Once these people had any ill intentions toward me, my only way to fight back seemed to be creating accidents. But using that method too often would inevitably raise suspicion, so I had to find a way to gain the power to protect myself. In this prison, I needed my own eyes, my own hands, even my own gun. Thinking of this, I decided to create a prison guard death agent inside Blackstone Prison. But creating this death agent would cost 2,000 crime hunting points. My current savings were still a little short. So I turned my gaze toward the line of malice from Wang Dashan. Although Gao Qiang's line of malice had disappeared, Wang Dashan's still existed. Only the line had changed from blood red to dark red. That meant the threat still existed, then the next target is you. Then I closed my eyes and sent Priest a new order. Investigate Wang Dashan and Guangming coal mine. I need all his information, especially anything related to Blackstone Prison. After receiving the order, Priest immediately opened his laptop and began gathering useful information. Just like Huang Xihai, most information about Wang Dashan was carefully packaged positive publicity. Things like one of Longcheng's top 10 outstanding young entrepreneurs. But Priest knew these were only appearances. Soon, he found a piece of negative news about Guangming coal mine. A dozen family members held banners outside Guangming coal mine demanding justice. Give me back my husband. A killer must pay with his life. In the photo, a haggard-looking woman held up a cardboard sign. On the sign, written in blood-red letters, was the name Zhang Dawei. Seeing this, Priest began digging into Zhang Dawei's connection to Guangming coal mine. After a while, he found online a plea for help posted a year ago. Her husband, Zhang Dawei, was a miner at Guangming coal mine. A year ago, he died in a so-called gas explosion accident. However, while Liu Kui was sorting through her husband's belongings, she found a diary. In it, scattered entries recorded some of Wang Dashan's strange behavior. It turned out Wang Dashan was an extremely superstitious bastard. Every time he opened a new mine tunnel, or whenever production was not going smoothly, he would perform some mystical mountain god ritual. And the so-called ritual meant using a living person as sacrifice. Not long after Zhang Dawei discovered this secret, he had an accident. Liu Kui took the diary and tried to confront them, but Wang Dashan's thugs brutally beat her away. They also threatened that if she dared talk nonsense, she and her child would disappear in an accident together. With nowhere else to turn, Liu Kui could only post online, asking for help, but no one paid attention. Then Priest followed the address left in the post and found Liu Kui. After the two met, he stated his purpose directly. I am someone who can help you get justice. After saying that, he took a thick stack of cash from his pocket. This is 5,000 yuan. Use it first to improve life for you and your child. I only need you to tell me everything about Guangming coal mine and Wang Dashan. The more detailed, the better. Looking at that stack of red banknotes, Liu Qi's eyes instantly reddened. For a year, she had suffered greatly, barely surviving by doing odd jobs and collecting scraps. Now, someone was finally willing to help her. The fear and grief she had suppressed for over a year burst out at that moment. After a long while, she finally said, Wang Dashan is a beast. Every time he opens a new mine, he uses a living person as sacrifice. He calls it offering to the mountain god, using one person's life in exchange for the safety and wealth of an entire mine. My husband must have been killed by him as a sacrifice. Listening to Liu Qi's broken description, in my mind, I quickly built a complete picture. Guangming coal mine was located in the barren mountains west of Longcheng. Wang Dashan's office was in a small building deep inside the mining area. Around the building, 2 shifts of guards patrolled 24 hours a day. Inside the building were several personal bodyguards, all ruthless desperados. Moreover, Liu Kui provided one crucial detail. Wang Dashan was suspicious by nature and never trusted electronic surveillance. So most cameras around his office were only for show. What truly worked were hidden sentries he had placed at key spots. She even relied on memory to draw a crude map, marking several hidden sentry positions her husband had once mentioned. After saying all this, Liu Kui said through gritted teeth, he killed my husband and threatened me. I only beg you to make him pay. After listening, I finally understood where Wang Dashan's malice came from. Gao Kong sold prisoners, Wang Dashan bought prisoners. One did it for money, the other for fate, and I was the sacrificial offering about to be dragged into their chain of transactions. If I had not killed Gao Kong in advance, my body would probably already be buried in some mine tunnel, becoming a so-called mountain god's sacrifice. Thinking of this, blazing rage rose in my heart. Letting such a person live was a waste of every second. Thinking of this, I no longer hesitated. I directly gave Priest the order to take out Wang Dashan. At this moment, in Guangming coal mine, Wang Dashan was sitting in his office, furious. With his huge beer belly sticking out, he pointed at his cousin and cursed loudly. Just because Gao Kong is dead, you can't find anyone. What the hell are you good for? Wang Dashan's cousin, Wang Dahu, was too frightened to even breathe loudly. Big brother, I'm trying to find a way. That bastard Gao Kong died too suddenly. The channels he had can't be connected to by anyone else so quickly. Hearing this, Wang Dashan slapped the mahogany desk. I don't care what method you use. If you don't find a sacrifice by the 3rd day of next month, I'll be the first to throw you in as an offering to the mountain god. After saying that, he roared at Wang Dahu to get out and handle it. Wang Dahu felt as if he had been granted amnesty and fled the office in a panic. Only Wang Dashan remained in the luxurious office. Panting heavily, he walked to the huge floor-to-ceiling window and looked down at the brightly lit mining area in the valley. This was his kingdom. He was the local emperor here. Everyone's life and death depended on his whim. But what he did not know was that his shadow had already merged into the mining area like a ghost. Guangming coal mine was located deep in the barren mountains. With only one entrance and exit, it was guarded by a shift of security guards. Inside the mining area, another shift of guards patrolled around the clock. It seemed heavily guarded, but in Priest's eyes, all of it was full of holes. Like an experienced Wolf, he moved through the shadows of the mountain forest. Inside the guard booth at the entrance, 2 guards were huddled together, watching short videos on a phone. They paid no attention to what was happening outside. Using the moment a coal truck drove in, Priest silently slipped into the mine close against the vehicle. Then, relying on his experience and Liu Qi's information, he accurately found Wang Dashan's 3-story building. Downstairs, 4 bodyguards were playing cards. Their attention was entirely on the card table. Long-term safety had made them numb to their surroundings. Then Priest circled around to the back of the building. There was an unguarded, steep mountain wall. He looked up at the lit window on the 3rd floor. That was Wang Dashan's office. Then he drew a small grappling hook from his waist. With a slight flick of his wrist, the hook silently caught onto a support beneath the 3rd floor window. Then he carefully climbed upward along the steel wire. In just a few breaths, he reached the 2nd floor platform. After that, he landed successfully like a cat. He did not move immediately. Instead, he waited quietly. A few minutes later, the office door opened. A man walked out, cursing under his breath. It was Wang Dahu, who had just been scolded by Wang Dashan. Damn it, he only knows how to lose his temper. If he's so capable, he can find one himself. Wang Dahu muttered softly while walking toward the stairwell. Just as Wang Dahu reached a visual blind spot, a hand suddenly reached out from the darkness behind him and covered his mouth and nose like lightning. Wang Dahu's pupils suddenly contracted. Just as he was about to struggle, he felt a chill at his neck. A piercing pain followed. He did not even have time to make a sound before all strength was drained from his body. After that, Priest dragged his body into the storage room under the stairs. The entire process took less than 3 seconds. Then he searched Wang Dahu and found the keys. After that, he walked step by step toward the lit office on the 3rd floor. At this moment, Wang Dashan was leaning back in his boss chair with his eyes closed, thinking about where he could make another windfall. Just then, a faint click came from the office door lock. Hearing it, Wang Dashan opened his eyes impatiently. Didn't I tell you to get lost? What are you back for? His words stopped halfway. Because standing at the door was a man whose face could not be seen clearly. Alarm bells screamed in Wang Dashan's heart. By instinct, he reached for the alarm button under the desk. But he no longer had the chance. Priest's figure crossed several meters in an instant. Wang Dashan only saw a cold flash. Then a tearing pain shot through his throat. Every sound was blocked inside his windpipe. Only a hoarse leaking sound came out. His eyes widened. He looked at the man before him in disbelief. Blood gushed wildly through his fingers. Priest gave him no time to think. He gripped the dagger in reverse, then cleanly and decisively stabbed him again in the heart. Soon, Wang Dashan fell heavily to the floor. After twitching a few times, he stopped moving completely. Priest looked at all of this expressionlessly. He did not leave immediately. Instead, he began dealing with the scene. First, he used a piece of cloth to wipe away anything he might have touched. Then he found the surveillance hard drive recorder hidden behind the bookcase and physically destroyed it completely. After finishing all this, he completely blended into the deep night. From infiltration to departure, the whole process took less than 20 minutes. At this moment, Guangming coal mine was still operating normally. No one knew their local emperor had already lost his life. Meanwhile, in Blackstone prison, I was lying on my bed with my eyes closed. As Priest's dagger pierced Wang Dashan's heart, congratulations, host, judgment successful. You have obtained 800 crime hunting points. At the same time, the line of malice from Wang Dashan also disappeared. Wang Dashan's threat had been completely removed. I let out a long breath, but my tense nerves did not fully relax. At this moment, I already had 2,350 crime hunting points. This number was enough for me to create a prison guard death agent. Without any hesitation, I began constructing this death agent in my mind. I named him Innocent. He was an ordinary-looking middle-aged man, and his identity was a prison guard at Blackstone Prison. Very soon, a logical and flawless prison guard identity was completed. The system told me Innocent would officially report for duty tomorrow. At the same time, it consumed 2,100 of my crime hunting points. Watching my points shrink by more than half instantly, I did not feel the slightest regret. Because compared to my life, this price was practically insignificant. With Innocent as this hidden nail planted within the prison management level, I finally had a little breathing room and space to maneuver. Early the next morning, when the first ray of sunlight pierced the morning fog of the mining area and shone on Guangming Coal Mine's rust-covered gate, a vehicle flashing red and blue police lights came roaring over. Deputy Captain Gao Feng of Longcheng Police Bureau's Criminal Investigation Team pushed open the car door and stepped out with a grave expression. He was about 40, with a tall, upright build. His falcon-like eyes were so sharp they seemed able to freeze through people's hearts. As a veteran who had spent 20 years on the front line of criminal investigation, he had solved countless strange and major cases. The bloodshed and evil he had seen were far beyond ordinary imagination. Captain Gao, the scene has been sealed off. The forensic examiner and technical team are investigating inside. A young officer quickly stepped forward to report. Gao Feng nodded without speaking and walked straight toward the standalone office building. A faint smell of blood still lingered in the air. The 4 bodyguards downstairs had already been controlled. Each of them looked ashen-faced. Even now, they had not recovered from the shock of discovering their boss's body. Gao Feng climbed to the 3rd floor and entered Wang Dashan's office. The luxurious office was a mess. But Gao Feng's gaze accurately caught the key point: to clean. Wang Dashan's obese corpse lay face up on the carpet behind the desk. The fatal wounds were to the throat and heart. There were no extra wounds and no signs of struggle. This showed the killer knew the body's vital points perfectly and possessed absolute confidence and strength. The office door lock showed no sign of forced entry. On the floor, aside from the victim's own blood and the investigator's footprints, there were no suspicious footprints. The doorknob, the desk, the teacup, and every place the killer might have touched were completely clean. No fingerprints could be extracted. Captain Gao, the head of the technical team, walked over and shook his head with an ugly expression. Too professional. Aside from the victim's and the bodyguard's fingerprints, there is nothing. The window is intact, with no climbing marks. But on the air conditioner bracket outside the window, we found an extremely faint metal scratch. The material is unknown and still being analyzed. It looks like it was caused by some kind of hook tool. What about the surveillance? Gao Feng asked in a low voice. The host hard drive was removed. It was physically destroyed and cannot be repaired. Gao Feng walked to the window and looked down. Behind it was a steep mountain wall. An ordinary person could never climb up from there. He glanced at the position of the air conditioner unit, then looked at the office layout. In his mind, he quickly reconstructed the killer's route. Climbing from the mountain wall to the 3rd floor window using tools. Waiting for the chance to enter the room, killing with one strike, destroying surveillance, wiping away traces, then returning the same way and vanishing silently into the night. The entire process was smooth as flowing water, without a single unnecessary movement. This was a long-planned, meticulously arranged, perfectly executed top-level assassination. Where's Wang Dahu's body? Gao Feng asked again. It was found in the storage room under the 2nd floor stairs. Same thing, a stab wound to the throat, killed in one strike. The time of death was only about 3 minutes apart from Wang Dashan's. Gao Feng's brows furrowed even tighter. Furrowed even deeper. This meant that in an extremely short time, the killer had assassinated 2 people in a row and perfectly cleaned up both scenes. Captain Gao, could it be underworld revenge? I heard Wang Dashan had many enemies in the underworld. The young officer guessed. Gao Feng shook his head. Underworld revenge is about demonstration and intimidation. Either they make the scene bloody and brutal, or they leave their name behind. To erase someone so cleanly without leaving a trace is more like a professional hitman. He turned and ordered his subordinates. The killer's motive is our only breakthrough. Investigate Wang Dashan for me. All his social relationships, business dealings, grudges, and feuds over the past decade or so, did them all out for me. Also, using the mining area as the center, retrieve all road surveillance within 50 kilometers, from 48 hours before and after the crime. Do not miss any suspicious vehicle or suspicious figure. Although he knew hope was slim, this was the only thing they could do now. Gao Feng had a strong premonition that this case would be the toughest one of his career. While the city bureau was overwhelmed by Wang Dashan's case, a new day arrived at Blackstone Prison. In Block 2, the newly appointed acting prison guard captain Zhao Latai had his hands behind his back and his slightly plump beer belly sticking out as he patrolled the block corridor. Gao Kang's accidental death was practically a windfall from heaven for him. This lucrative post in Block 2 had finally fallen into his hands. He had long envied the profits Gao Kong made here and was determined to go even further, making up for everything he had missed before. Captain Zhao, the new recruit from personnel, has arrived. Innocent has finished the paperwork and been assigned to our Block 2. A prison guard jogged over and reported. "Oh, bring him here." Zhao Latai stopped as a sharp gleam flashed in his eyes. Soon, a young man of average build, ordinary looking, with calm eyes, walked over. He stood perfectly straight and gave a standard salute. "Captain Zhao." "Hello, I am Innocent, the new prison guard reporting in." Zhao Latai clasped his hands behind his back, sticking out his signature beer belly, and circled around Innocent once, sizing him up from head to toe. He did not like that look in his eyes. Too steady, not like a young rookie at all. In his view, young people should have some sharpness, or some timidity, or perhaps ambition they could not hide, but they should never be this composed. That made him a little uncertain. He put on a friendly smile and patted Innocent on the shoulder. "Ziwu, right, welcome, don't be so stiff. From now on, we're brothers eating from the same pot." He spoke polite words, but in his heart, he was calculating how to test this newcomer's attitude. What he needed was a helper, not a stubborn hothead. "Come, Ziwu, I'll show you around our prison block." Zhao Latai led Innocent on a slow stroll through the prison block, seemingly introducing the situation casually as they walked. "Look," Zhao Latai pointed at the inmates in the distance. "These people, every one of them was a vicious criminal outside. Once they come in, they have to behave obediently. But some people are like stones in a cesspit, stinking and stubborn. No matter how you knock them down, it is useless." Then his tone changed. His voice lowered slightly, with the tone of someone teaching a secret. "But some people are more sensible. They know how to make life inside a little more comfortable. And we, as managers, sometimes also need such sensible inmates to cooperate with their work, so the block can be managed more harmoniously." "Wouldn't you say that makes sense?" Innocent's eyes moved slightly, showing just the right hint of being taught. "Captain Zhao is right. As a newcomer, there are many things I still don't understand. In the future, please guide me." Captain Zhao, seeing that he understood, Zhao Latai's smile grew wider. He brought Innocent to the door of his cell and pointed at an inmate wiping the floor inside. The moment that man saw Zhao Latai, he immediately bowed and scraped, his face full of fawning smiles. Take this old Li, for example. He got in for bribery. He used to be a small boss. Very good at working things out. Zhao Latai said slowly. His health isn't good. He can't do heavy work, but his family cares about him. Every month, they ask someone to send word, asking whether he lacks anything, or if anything needs improving. In the spirit of humanitarianism, we can't be completely heartless either. So his work in prison is a little easier, and his food is a little better than others. This way, he actively cooperates with our work, and our management is easier. A win-win, right? These words sounded dignified, dressing up naked power and money dealings as humane management and work convenience. The so-called family sending word was nothing but monthly dirty money. The so-called improvements meant using money to bribe prison guards in exchange for privileges. This was Zhao Latai's test. He did not directly mention taking money. Instead, he used a living example to place this unspoken rule before Innocent. If you showed approval, then you were one of them. If you showed even a trace of contempt or righteous indignation, then you were a hothead who needed to be guarded against and pushed aside. Innocent was silent for half a second. On his face appeared just the right hint of sudden realization and a little envy. "So that's how it is." He lowered his voice and said in a slightly flattering tone, "I understand. Captain Zhao, you really know what to do. You keep this block in perfect order. I used to be simple-minded and only knew how to work. Now that I'm here, I really need to learn this management wisdom from you." These words both flattered Zhao Latai and cleverly gave himself the image of someone simple-minded and obedient. They perfectly dispelled Zhao Latai's last doubts. Ha ha ha. This made Zhao Latai laugh heartily. He patted Innocent hard on the back. "Ziwu, I can tell you're quite clever. Don't worry. Follow me and I won't treat you badly. Our block to may be hard work, but it's not without some profit. Do the work well, satisfy the leaders above, make the inmates below obedient, and everyone will have an easier life." Then he pointed to another corner, where several fierce-looking inmates stood. He lowered his voice and switched to a lecturing tone. Of course, there are also stubborn bastards who don't know what's good for them. People like that are the black sheep of the block. They waste resources and always cause trouble. You can't be soft-hearted with them. When necessary, use special methods to teach them what rules are. Otherwise, this team can't be led. He was hinting at the dark side of the prison, further testing Innocent's acceptance. Innocent's gaze chilled slightly, then immediately returned to calm. He replied in an even lower voice, I understand. Captain Zhao, treat friends as warmly as spring and enemies as cruelly as winter. I will follow all your arrangements. Good, good, good. Zhao Latai said good 3 times in a row. The last trace of doubt in his heart vanished. This Innocent was not only smart, but ruthless enough. He was practically made for Block 2, but how could he know that this talent made for Block 2 was actually Lin Mo's eyes and ears? The prison guard death agent Innocent had only one core objective, to protect Lin Mo and eliminate all potential threats. At the same time, inside the office building of Longsheng Public Security Bureau's criminal investigation team, the atmosphere was so oppressive it felt like water could be wrung from it. The task force for the Guangming coal mine murder case had been working for 24 hours straight. Everyone's eyes were bloodshot, yet they still had not found any valuable clues. Captain Gao, this isn't working. All surveillance footage within 50 kilometers from 48 hours before, after the crime has been reviewed. We screened over 1,000 suspicious vehicles and hundreds of suspicious people, but preliminary investigation found no obvious suspects. There were no new findings from the scene either. The material analysis of that metal scratch is out. It is a common alloy, widely used, and its source is very difficult to trace. Bad news kept coming to Gao Feng, making his already furrowed brows knot together. The killer was like a real ghost. After leaving 2 bodies in the world, he had completely vanished, without leaving the slightest trace. Just as the entire task force was at a deadlock, Zhao Donglai, who was in charge of Huang Xihai's case, hurried in. Captain Gao, I found something. Zhao Donglai's voice was not loud, but it made everyone present instinctively raise their heads. Gao Feng turned around, irritation showing in his bloodshot eyes. What did you find, old Zhao? Aren't you in charge of Huang Xihai's case? Zhao Donglai did not answer immediately. He walked behind a young officer. That officer was staring intently at a split-screen surveillance feed, doing dull comparison work. Zili, rewind the image you just saw and enlarge it. Zhao Donglai's tone was urgent. The young officer froze for a moment, then immediately reacted. His fingers tapped the keyboard a few times and brought up one surveillance image. The footage came from a convenience store camera beside a station. The image quality was not clear. A man wearing a sanitation worker's uniform, with a mask and cap, flashed past from behind. Zhao Donglai stared fixedly at that back. His pupils suddenly contracted. It's him. Zhao Donglai pointed at the screen and said decisively, Captain Gao, look. This person's build and walking habits are similar to the suspect in Huang Xihai's case. Hearing this, Gao Feng's spirits lifted. He rushed over in a few quick steps. He stared at the screen for a long while, then asked Zili to pull up the suspect's surveillance screenshots provided by Zhao Donglai's side. Although they were very blurry, when compared side by side, although the clothing and scenes were completely different, the posture and gait were almost carved from the same mold. A terrifying thought rose simultaneously in the minds of the 2 veteran investigators. Zili, keep tracking this person. Old Zhao, let's go to the conference room. Gao Feng made the decision immediately. The conference room door closed, cutting off the noise outside. Gao Feng personally brewed Zhao Donglai a cup of strong tea. Tell me about your case. Gao Feng got straight to the point. The killer's method. Zhao Donglai took a sip of hot tea and said in Huang Xihai's case, the scene was extremely clean. The forensic report said the murder weapon was a sharp object less than 1 centimeter in diameter. It entered from the left side of his neck and precisely severed the carotid artery. More terrifyingly, the forensic examiner speculated that the weapon may have been twisted inside, completely cutting off Huang Xihai's chance of survival. The killer was professional and calm, and extremely strong. He paused and looked at Gao Feng. My people tested every place where traces might have been left. No fingerprints, no footprints, they didn't even find 1 extra hair. A chill ran up Gao Feng's back. This description was so similar to the Guangming coal mine case he was handling. On our side, the victims are Wang Dashan and Wang Dahu. Gao Feng's voice became dry. Fatal wounds to the throat and heart, clean and decisive. There were no signs of struggle at the scene, which means they may have been subdued instantly while completely unprepared. We also found nothing. Every place the killer might have touched was spotless. Two different cases, different locations, and different victims, yet the criminal style is shockingly consistent. Extreme professionalism and extremely high counter-investigation awareness. Old Zhao, how is your investigation going? Gao Feng asked. I combed through all surveillance around Yulong Pavilion from 1 hour before and after the crime. A hint of helplessness appeared on Zhao Donglai's face. We locked onto several suspicious targets wearing work uniforms and carrying toolboxes. Later, we asked Huang Xihai's surviving bodyguard to identify the body shape. In the end, we confirmed it was this man we saw on surveillance. He wore a mask and a cap, so his face could not be seen at all. We tracked him through surveillance, but he eventually disappeared near the Western Old District. That area is a surveillance blind spot. There are too many small roads and alleys. There was simply no way to continue. What about the victim's social relationships? Gao Feng asked. Huang Xihai, that scumbag, had enough enemies to line up from south to north. We focused on several people who had deep grudges against him. For example, an old man named Zhang Gudong. His life savings were cheated away by Huang Xihai's finance company. After reporting the case and losing the lawsuit, he was threatened by Huang, but we checked. Old Zhang has a perfect alibi, and he has no ability to hire such a professional killer. As for Huang's business rivals, we checked them one by one too. Nothing abnormal was found. I even sent people to protect his partner Chen Guangyao for a while. In the end, nothing happened. The killer's target seemed to be only Huang Xihai from the very beginning. A couple days ago, manpower was really tight, so we withdrew the protection. After hearing this, Gao Feng drew a heavy circle on the whiteboard, circling the Huang Xihai case together with the Guangming coal mine case. Merge the cases. Gao Feng's tone allowed no doubt. These are very likely not two separate cases, but the work of the same killer. Zhao Donglai nodded. I'd agree. This killer is calm and powerful, with a terrifyingly meticulous mind, like a top professional hitman. I suggest giving him a code name. Call him Killer, Gao Feng said. This simple and direct code name perfectly summarized all the killer's traits. Good. The two captains immediately summoned the members of both task forces, announced the case merger decision, and gathered all the information on the whiteboard. Code name, Killer. Characteristics, male, height 178 centimeters, medium and slightly strong build, extremely strong counter-investigation ability, excellent psychological quality, calm and professional, with great strength. Method, uses small sharp weapons, kills with one strike, usually attacks vital points, such as the throat and heart. The scenes are cleaned extremely thoroughly, leaving no traces. Known cases, Yulong Pavilion's Huang Xihai case, Guangming Coal Mine's Wang Dashan case. Known appearance location, Longcheng's Western Old District. Looking at the information on the whiteboard, the entire conference room fell silent. Everyone felt a heavy pressure. This killer was the most difficult opponent they had ever encountered. Now, we reorganized the investigation direction. Gao Feng's voice broke the silence. First, review all victims' social relationships again and cross-check them. See whether there may be any overlap among their enemies. This killer must have his own life trajectory. He must have some connection with one of the victims that we have not discovered yet. Second, tracking the killer through surveillance failed in the Guangming coal mine case. Then we must seize the only remaining clue. Killer once appeared in the Western Old District, then turned that place upside down for me. All hotels, inns, short-term rentals, and internet cafes, check them door to door. I don't believe a living person can disappear into thin air. As one order after another was issued, the task force that had been stuck rekindled its fighting spirit. A dragnet aimed at killer began to slowly open. Blackstone Prison, cell 2203, Lin Mo lay quietly on his bunk, eyes slightly closed, as if already asleep. In reality, his mind was working at an unprecedented speed. In his mind, he was repeatedly reviewing the two completed hunts. Huang Xihai of Yulong Pavilion, a fraudster disguised as a businessman, died in the elevator hall. Wang Dashan of Guangming Coal Mine, a mine owner who treated human life like grass, died in his office. 2 cases, 3 lives, all of these were priests' work. Lin Mo never underestimated Longcheng Public Security's capabilities, especially those experienced veteran investigators. After Huang Xihai's case happened, perhaps they would classify it as revenge killing. But immediately after that, the Guangming coal mine case happened with almost the same professional method. The investigators were very likely to find clues and discover the connection between the 2 cases. Case merger. Lin Mo silently repeated the term in his heart. Once the cases were merged, it meant the officers had already realized that in Longcheng, a highly professional and extremely dangerous serial killer had appeared. They would immediately gather all the clues and build the killer's psychological profile, behavioral model, priest's height and build. and even his walking posture analyzed from surveillance, all of it would be recorded. An extremely professional method, extremely high counter-investigation awareness, and scenes that left no traces. When these traits were combined, they would point to a terrifying conclusion. The killer was a top professional assassin. Lin Mo could almost imagine that right now, in some conference room at the city bureau, a huge whiteboard was filled with analysis of this killer. The members of the task force must be frowning at that whiteboard, feeling pressure as heavy as a mountain. They were chasing a person who did not exist, one created by Lin Mo's will. The assassin death throne he controlled, named Mu Shai, but Lin Mo knew just as well he could not relax in the slightest. The officer's investigative ability was beyond doubt. They might not find Mu Shi's true identity, but they could follow the surveillance footage, follow the faint traces Mu Shai left behind, and keep tightening the net. Mu Shi's range of movement was shrinking. He had to make him act faster before the officers caught his trail, and extract greater value from him. First, he had to gain more Sun value. That was the foundation of his survival and strength. Second, he had to muddy the waters further. When the number of cases grew, the clues became more chaotic, and the victims came from more varied backgrounds. The killer profile built by the officers would be overturned again and again. Their investigation would also fall into confusion. But merely muddying the waters was not enough. Lin Mo's gaze pierced through the darkness, as if he could see the distant future. His true target for now was the perjurer who had sent him to this prison. He had to give the killer a clear and definite motive, yet one the officers would struggle to trace. That way, when the perjurer was killed, the officers would not focus on Lin Mo's connection to him, or on that old case. His real purpose would be hidden behind the killer's motive. In Lin Mo's mind, a perfect plan gradually took shape: justice. A paranoid, extreme sense of justice beyond the law. This killer's targets should not be random, nor should he kill for money. He should be a cleaner, one who hunts those steeped in evil, yet who rely on power, influence, or legal loopholes to remain free. He wanted to cloak Mu Shi's actions in the tragic guise of enforcing justice for heaven. Only then, when he dealt with the perjurer later, would it not seem abrupt. At the same time, no one would think Lin Mo killed them for committing perjury against him. Instead, he would first have Mu Shai investigate the perjurer's other crimes. That way, the perjurer's death would merely be an ordinary entry on the cleaner's abnormal kill list. People would not pay too much attention to a prisoner serving time in jail, even if the two were tied as witness and convict. Even better, this kind of motive would make the officer's investigation hellishly difficult. Between the victims, there would be no direct social connection. Their only common point was guilt. And between the killer and them, there would be no intersection at all. How could the officers search the vast crowd and find this messenger of justice, who seemed to have no personal motive? They would only fall into one dead end after another. Once the plan was set, Lin Mo's will turned into commands and crossed space to reach Mu Shai. First, gather information as soon as possible and choose the next target. The target had to fit the profile of a vicious criminal who escaped the law. This positioning would make the killer's image clearer. Second, begin investigating. Information related to the perjurer from back then. There was no need to act in haste. Instead, he had to collect the perjurer's crimes beyond perjury. The more secretly, the better. It would pave the way for a future hunt. Night settled over Longcheng First People's Hospital. The smell of disinfectant filled the air, mixing with the anxious breaths of patients' families, forming a uniquely oppressive atmosphere. A figure pushed a cleaning cart slowly through the quiet corridor of the inpatient ward. She wore a gray work uniform, a mask, and a baseball cap. The brim was pulled very low, revealing only a pair of eyes. It was Mu Shai. After receiving Lin Mo's command, she immediately began to act. And hospitals, where birth, aging, illness, and death, joy and sorrow gathered, often exposed humanity's unpaid debts of sin and punishment. She mopped past ward after ward, while her ears, like radar, captured every useful piece of information around her. That Mr. Liu's son, Liu Fei, came to see his dad again. He even brought several friends, laughing and chatting. Which Liu Fei? The one who killed someone drunk driving 2 months ago. That's right, I heard the family sued. And what happened? He paid some money, got a suspended sentence, and did not even have to go to prison. There is no justice. Shh, keep your voice down. His family is rich and powerful. We cannot afford to offend them. Two nurses pushed a medicine cart past, their quiet conversation clearly entering Mu Shi's ears. Mu Shi's movements did not pause at all, but the name Liu Fei had already been precisely caught by her. She continued forward and stopped at the stairwell door at the end of the corridor. A sound suppressed to the extreme, a heart-wrenching sob, came intermittently from inside the stairwell. There was no anger or strength left in the crying, only endless despair. Mu Shai turned her head and looked through the small glass window on the stairwell door. A woman around 50 years old was curled up on the cold cement steps. She was plainly dressed, her hair was graying, and her face was covered in wrinkles and tear stains. Her body trembled violently from crying for so long. In her hand, she clutched a yellowed photograph tightly. In the photo was a girl with a ponytail, smiling brightly like sunlight. The woman was named Sun Xiying. The photo in her hand showed her only daughter, Chen Yue. 1 month ago, Chen Yue, who had just received her college admission letter, was on her way home from work when she was hit by an out-of-control sports car. The driver was Liu Fei, a well-known rich second-generation son in Longsheng. The piercing screech of brakes, the desperate cries, and the reek of liquor from Liu Fei became a nightmare Sun Xiying could never escape. At that moment, the stairwell door was shoved open with a bang. Several fashionably dressed young people surrounded a flamboyantly dressed man as they walked in. They laughed and smoked, showing no concern at all for Sun Xiying curled up in the corner. The one leading them was Liu Fei. When he saw Sun Xiying, a trace of stiffness flashed across his face, then turned into condescending mockery. "Well, isn't this Annie Chen? What, still crying here?" Liu Fei blew out a smoke ring and said lazily, "If you want to blame someone, blame your daughter for not watching where she was going. She deserved to die. Besides, didn't my family pay you a huge sum? Enough for you to build several houses back home. What more do you want?" Sun Xiying raised her bloodshot eyes and said in a hoarse voice, "Money? I only want my daughter back alive. You beast, you will get what you deserve. You will definitely get retribution. Retribution. Ha ha ha." Liu Fei seemed to have heard the biggest joke in the world. He pointed at himself. "My retribution is living well. Well, your daughter can only rot in the ground. That is fate, understand?" One of his companions tugged at his arm. "Brother Fei, forget it. Don't lower yourself to her level. Your dad is still waiting. Let's go." Only then did Liu Fei wave his hand in boredom and swagger off with his companions around him. In the corridor, their unrestrained laughter still echoed. The smoke they left behind made Sun Xiying cough violently. Her tears and despair surged out once again. The entire scene was taken in by Mu Shai, who was pushing the cleaning cart outside the stairwell. No one noticed her presence. Through Mu Shi's eyes, Lin Mo, far away in Blackstone Prison, saw everything. If the motive was a paranoid sense of justice beyond the law, then the target had been found. The name Liu Fei was firmly locked in Lin Mo's mind. The next target was him. Mu Shai alerted no one. She quietly pushed the cleaning cart away, then she began tracking Liu Fei. Liu Fei, a rich air raised in comfort and flattery, was arrogant and utterly unguarded. After leaving the hospital, he took his friends straight to a high-end club. The debauchery lasted until late at night. Mu Shai was like a patient hunter, observing everything about her prey from the dark. She noted the model of Liu Fei's sports car, the license plate, the clubs he often visited, as well as his residence in the luxury community, Jiangjing Huiding. Throughout the entire process, Liu Fei had no security around him. In his view, Longsheng was his family's backyard. If even the law could not touch him, who would dare attack him? In Mu Shi's mind, a simple and efficient killing plan had already taken shape. Tomorrow would be Liu Fei's death day. She turned and disappeared into the night, heading toward the old Western District. That was where her temporary hideout was, and where she prepared her tools. Meanwhile, the task force's investigation was also proceeding at full speed. The victim in the Guangming coal mine case, Wang Dashan, had extremely complicated social connections. After Gao Feng's team screened dozens of people, they finally found Liu Kui. 1 year ago, Liu Qi's husband died in a gas explosion at Guangming coal mine. Wang Dashan paid only a tiny sum in compensation, and used all kinds of means to threaten Liu Kui, forbidding her to speak out. When Gao Feng and a young officer arrived at Liu Qi's home, she appeared very uneasy and nervous. "Comrade Liu Kui, we are from the city bureau. We want to ask you about Wang Dashan." Gao Feng tried to make his tone gentle. After learning of Wang Dashan's death, a trace of hard-to-detect satisfaction flashed in Liu Qi's eyes, but was quickly replaced by fear. She kept waving her hands. "Officer, I'm just a woman, I don't know anything." Gao Feng did not press her immediately. He took out the very blurry photo of the killer's figure captured from surveillance. "Have you seen this person?" The moment Liu Qi's eyes touched the photo, her body stiffened almost imperceptibly. Although it was only for an instant, that detail did not escape Gao Feng's sharp eyes. No, I haven't." Liu Kui hurriedly looked away and lowered her head. "I don't know this person. Look carefully again." Gao Feng's voice was steady and firm. "This person may be connected to Wang Dashan's case. If you provide a clue, you will be helping us catch the killer. That is every citizen's duty. I really don't know him." Liu Qi's voice carried a sob. Her hands anxiously twisted the hem of her clothes. Her husband had died unjustly, that villain Wang Dashan had gone unpunished. Now that Wang Dashan was dead, her heart held only gratitude toward the benefactor who upheld justice for heaven. How could she betray him? Gao Feng looked at her in silence for a moment, then suddenly changed the subject. Did you receive your husband's work injury compensation? Liu Kui suddenly raised her head, her eyes instantly reddened. A beast like Wang Dashan, who eats people without spitting out the bones. How could he give me that much money? My husband died in his mine, and all I got was a perfunctory explanation. He even sent people to our home to scare me and my child. So you hated him, Gao Feng stated. HMPH, I dreamed of him dying. Liu Kui became emotional. Then, when a stranger helped you fulfill that wish, would you choose to shield him? Gao Feng's gaze was like a saw, each word cutting into Liu Qi's heart. Liu Qi's psychological defenses collapsed in an instant. She stared blankly at Gao Feng, her lips trembling, unable to speak. Comrade Liu Kui, Gao Feng softened his tone. We are officers, our duty is to uphold the law. Wang Dashan was guilty, but he should have been judged by the law, not privately executed by anyone. This killer, today he could kill Wang Dashan for you. Tomorrow he might kill an innocent person for some other reason. He is an extremely dangerous existence. We must catch him. I understand how you feel, but shielding a criminal is also against the law. Your child is still young. Do you want him to have a mother who broke the law? That last sentence became the final straw that broke the camel's back. Liu Kui covered her face and burst into tears. I'll tell you everything. After a long while, she finally gave a broken account of what happened. A few days ago, a man wearing a hat and mask had indeed come to see her. His figure was very similar to the person in the photo. He did not reveal his identity. He only asked in detail about all of Wang Dashan's evil deeds, as well as the coal mine's layout and security. He didn't say he was going to kill anyone, he only said he would help us get justice. Liu Kui sobbed. I didn't see his face clearly. He wore a mask and hat the whole time. He left after he finished speaking. That is really all I know. Although he got no facial features, this conversation made Gao Feng's heart sink. This killer's motive did not seem to be revenge, let alone money. He was like a cleaner. Before acting, he even verified the target's crimes. This kind of person was more terrifying than a simple professional killer and harder to track. Elsewhere, the other team led by Zhao Donglai also made significant progress in sweeping the Old Western District. The Old Western District was a mixed and chaotic area. Countless alleys crisscrossed like spiderwebs. Old tenement buildings and messy rental rooms stood everywhere. It was a blind spot for surveillance and a blind zone for management. Zhao Donglai and his team members took the photo of the killer's figure and began checking every hotel, inn, short-term rental, and internet cafe in the area. The search was dull and difficult, but results slowly began to appear. After an afternoon of comparison and screening, the scope had narrowed greatly. Dozens of recent tenants, whose builds resembled the photo, were placed on the priority watch list. And among them, a tenant named Mushai was shockingly listed. Night deepened. The evening wind carried the old district's decaying smell. Mushai's figure silently merged into the shadows of the Old Western District. She had already planned tomorrow's action. Now she only needed to return to the rental room and prepare the tools. However, when she turned into the alley where she lived, her footsteps suddenly froze. A police vehicle was parked at the alley entrance. The lights on the roof were not flashing, but they were still striking in the dark. Not far away, her landlord, a slightly overweight middle-aged man, was standing before two officers, speaking enthusiastically. He even pointed toward the building where Mushai rented a room. One officer seemed to be showing him a photo. Although it was far away, Mushai could clearly see that it was the blurry back view of herself captured from surveillance near Guangming coal mine. She had been discovered. Mushai's pupils contracted slightly, but Lin Mo's will kept her absolutely calm. She immediately assessed the current situation. The other side should only be conducting a preliminary check and had not logged onto her yet. Otherwise, what awaited her would be an ambush and arrest. The landlord knew very little about her and could not provide key information. But they had already found this building and even reached her doorstep. Go in and confront them directly? The thought flashed through her mind and was immediately rejected. Any direct contact with law enforcement would leave flaws. A professional hunter would never put herself in such an uncontrollable situation. Then there was only one choice: abandon this place. Mushai did not hesitate at all. She slowly backed away, her body silently melting back into the darkness. That police vehicle, those two officers, and the chattering landlord had no idea at all that the target they were searching for had just been less than 50 meters away. Blackstone Prison, cell 2203. Lin Mo slowly closed his eyes. Everything Mu Shai experienced appeared in sync within his consciousness. Much faster than expected, he muttered softly. The Longcheng officer's efficiency had indeed exceeded his estimate. The Mu Shai thread was about to be caught, originally. He had planned to let Mu Shai at least handle the perjurer before deciding whether to flee or simply get arrested. Now it seemed the planned target could not be completed, then flee ahead of schedule. Leave Longcheng immediately, go to another city. Lin Mo issued the order to Mu Shai in his mind. Although it was not perfect, Mu Shai had at least preliminarily completed the early task of muddying the waters. Now she would become a seed, going somewhere farther away to await new orders. And the stage of Longcheng needed a new actor. Lin Mo's thoughts sank into the depths of his mind. A glowing interface that only he could see appeared. Sin value balance for 100 points. The extra 150 points came from a few days ago during an unexpected disturbance in the prison cafeteria. A thug with the blood of 3 innocent people on his hands had, in the chaos, accidentally had his throat cut by a shard of a meal tray and died on the spot. The entire process was flawless and was ruled an accident caused by a prison fight. 400 Sin value points were just enough to summon a new assassin Deathsworn. To take over Mu Shi's work in Longcheng, the new assassin Deathsworn had to avoid the killer traits locked onto by the officers. Usability, Deathsworn deployment, name. Shui Liu, appearance, female, height 165 centimeters. Ordinary looks, slightly dull temperament. Personality, skilled assassin, inject professional assassin techniques and knowledge into the Deathsworn. She will be proficient in killing with poison, understand infiltration, disguise, observation, and one-strike kills, and possess extremely strong counter-surveillance awareness. She knows how to clean traces from a scene. Deployment location, outside Blackstone Prison. Deployment method, avoid surveillance and sightlines appearing in a hidden location. System response, settings complete. Generating Deathsworn Shui Liu, generation complete. Sin value balance, 0 points. In front of Mu Shi's rental room in the Old Western District, this is room 302. The landlord rubbed his hands and took out a bunch of keys. Officer, I don't know him well, his name is Mu Shai. He came half a month ago, he barely talks, he paid 3 months rent, all in cash. He usually leaves early and comes back late, I never paid attention to what he does. Zhao Donglai exchanged a look with his colleague. Yes, landlord, open the door. Mu Shai, are you there? The landlord knocked perfunctorily. There was no response inside. With a click, the door was opened. A faint smell of disinfectant rushed out. The scene inside the room stunned everyone. It was to clean 1 bed, 1 table, and 1 chair.